The Secretary will read the order.
Debate on vote number 25, Economic Development Appropriation Bill.
And I'll call upon the Honourable the Minister of Economic Development to start the debate.
House Chairperson, honourable members and cabinet colleagues, agency heads and invited guests. In the past 12 months, Deputy Minister Masuku and I visited factories, construction sites, energy plants, communities and investment conferences across the country. We spoke to working and unemployed South Africans, to local leaders and managers, to investors, to see the impact of our policies, to identify what more we need to do. It has been an invaluable pulse take of development that we can be proud of and of urgent challenges. The scale of the challenges we face are clear. Many young people full of energy but without jobs. Broken infrastructure that has not been maintained. Investors who face problems getting their businesses to run properly. But we also saw much to celebrate. Quiet but solid efforts at local level to transform lives. South Africans who are making us proud. I want to share those experiences today. Stories of jobs, of innovation, of social infrastructure. Andres Motseke, a worker whose towel-making factory has expanded and now employs 81 more people than a year ago. Rahma Thomas, a black woman who co-owns a shoe factory that doubled its employment in the past 6 years and now employs 300 people. Bongiwe Gumede, a lab technician from a packaging plant in KwaZulu-Natal that expanded by 17% using an IDC loan. Jeff van Zyl, an entrepreneur experimenting with new technologies, making it more difficult to steal cables from our electricity network. Solomon Masango, a black maize and soya farmer who benefited from the agreement government reached with Afgri. Avril Johnson, a worker whose bed linen factory is expanding jobs, bringing in new machines with a loan and competitiveness enhancement grant from government. 56-year-old Victoria Gumede, who now uses the new clinic 10 minutes walk from her home in KwaMashleka, her life transformed and healed from the medical ailment that kept her in bed. 15-year-old Joyce Mokwenya in Freedom Park attending a new school built through the infrastructure program. Francois Kapp, an engineer who works for the Square Kilometre Array, the site located in Carnarvon, where South Africa is building the most advanced radio telescope system in the world. I met community members and foreign investors in Pofadder, in the Northern Cape, to launch a 6 billion rand solar plant that will produce enough electricity for at least 80,000 households or 400,000 South Africans, one of 39 completed renewable energy plants. These stories of South Africans working, are confirmed by the statistics collected nationally. In the budget vote speech in July last year, I noted there were 15.1 million employed people in South Africa. Today, that figure is 15.3 million, 250,000 additional jobs over the 9-month period. Most of this growth has been in construction, the public sector, and trade. However, the rate of growth, of investment, and of job creation remain well below what is required, and we are confronted with weaknesses in global growth and domestic factors such as energy constraints and industrial relations conflict. The economy grew by 1.5% and GDP is now more than 3.8 trillion rand. Public investment in the economy grew by 280 billion rand, but private investment remains weak. The budget I tabled today will strengthen efforts to focus on jobs, on investment and on industrialization, using the combined capacity of EDD, of its agencies, and working closely with the economic cluster of government. I want to highlight a few examples of what we've done, of what we plan to do in the 6 areas identified in the last budget vote, namely infrastructure, industrialization, investment, innovation, inclusion, and integration. Over the past 5 years, the IDC has dramatically increased its level of industrial funding to 61 billion rand. Last year, the IDC approved 1.6 billion rand for black industrialists, including a company owned by Paseka Lesolang, which makes an innovative valve to reduce water leaks, a foundry in Benoni with major black ownership, a new packaging paper mill to be built with 51% black ownership, a gas pipeline owned by black South Africans, a manufacturer of compressed briquettes owned by Ms. Lorraine Masipa, and a large black-owned and managed shoe factory. We must scale up this to support industrialization, investment, and inclusion. A commitment to real, broad-based empowerment must underlie our efforts to create a more equitable society and to ensure that the benefits of transformation accrues to millions of South Africans. We need more worker and producer cooperatives to harness the entrepreneurial energy of the nation, to address the high levels of inequality and economic exclusion. China, Spain, and India are all examples of countries with strong and effective cooperatives. We must also nurture individual black industrialists who run and own their businesses in the productive sectors of the economy, who create decent work opportunities and bring innovation, entrepreneurship, and strong partnerships with their workforce. I am pleased, therefore, to announce that the 100 billion rand committed for industrial development over the next 5 years by the IDC will include 23 billion rand set aside to support and facilitate the growth of black industrialists in the productive sectors, and 4.5 billion rand each for women and youth-empowered businesses. The IDC will give a discount of 150 basis points on its pricing to black industrialists who own and control the operations, with additional discounted pricing for meeting jobs, localization, and regional development targets. And we'll do this in partnership, among others, with Minister Davies and the DTI. To complement this, the state is looking at various set-asides in infrastructure and other products to support black industrialists so that we need to address their requirements for markets. And to generate viable projects to productively absorb this level of funding, I have directed the IDC to develop internal capacity to identify market opportunities and potential co-investment, technology, and funding partners. We'll convene a roundtable with private investors in different provinces in the next 6 months to identify new opportunities. We're working with local companies to weather various global headwinds, particularly in the steel industry, which has been affected by the sharp slowdown in global demand. In addition, the Competition Commission has completed its investigation into collusion by the biggest steel maker. We're looking at ways to enable a more competitive steel price for downstream users so that we stimulate local demand for steel. I've appointed an independent panel of steel industry experts to advise on options and modalities. Honorable members, we welcome the jobs stability in the clothing and textile industry for the past 3 years as a result of a number of government and industry initiatives. Government will step up efforts to strengthen the industry. The partnership with the DTI has been invaluable, and I invite members of Parliament to see examples of this and other industries in the old assembly area after the budget vote. Our efforts on economic integration with the rest of the continent are yielding success. During last year, honorable members, we exported 300 billion rand worth of goods to the rest of Africa, an increase of 36 billion rand. Aside from the damage that xenophobic attacks do to our humanity, we cannot unscramble ourselves from Africa, our continent, without serious economic damage. Our total manufacturing, mining, and agricultural exports to the rest of Africa sustain 244,000 direct jobs in South Africa. 244,000 direct jobs in South Africa. Of these, 169,000 are manufacturing. Africa is now more important for growth in manufacturing exports than Europe, the United States, or China. The gas that powers our largest industrial company, Sasol, comes from Mozambique. Every second glass of water consumed in Gauteng every day comes from Lesotho. The biggest export market for South African plastic products is Zimbabwe. For televisions, it's Zambia, and for clothing, it is Mozambique. On Africa Day, 25 May, the department will convene a symposium with the University of Johannesburg and the IDC of investors, workers, intellectuals, and public officials to look at the economic impact of our relationship with the rest of the continent. We'll take this road show to different provinces to engage our people in a deeper discussion about being African, to communicate one simple truth. Our prosperity is intimately tied with our economic relations with the rest of the continent. To promote inclusive growth and industrialization, our trade policies have supported domestic manufacture. Over the past year, 13 products received stronger trade protection or rebates, from paper and batteries to barbed wire and chickens. Yet if we simply rely on tariffs without improved investment and productivity, we will not become competitive. I will, therefore, within 6 weeks, issue a trade directive to ITAC to ensure that tariff changes at the request of industry are accompanied by reciprocal commitments by manufacturers to invest more, create more jobs, improve their products, improve productivity. The Small Enterprise Finance Agency, SEFA, maintained an important milestone last year, approving 1 billion rand worth of funding projects for the second year in succession. Operational responsibility of SEFA is now being transferred to Minister Zulu, with whom we are working closely to integrate small business as a focus in all our economic programs. Honorable members, the growth of the small business sector, particularly small retail, is a critical economic entry point for Black South Africans. I wish to advise that the Competition Commission will launch a market inquiry into parts of the retail sector involving large supermarket chains, grocery stores, and small retail outlets like spaza shops. It will cover the structure of the industry, including retail outlets in townships, the tenancy arrangements in shopping malls that seem to squeeze smaller players out, and the impact of the growth of large retail chains on competition, jobs, and small business development. The Competition Commission will announce the terms of the market inquiry within the next 4 weeks. The health care inquiry, chaired by ex-Chief Justice Sandile Ngobo, has done considerable work and will commence public hearings into the cost of medical care this year. The Competition Commission has uncovered evidence of a cartel in the furniture removal industry targeted at the SA National Defence Force, and it's also investigating price fixing in the auto components sector. The message is clear. We will act against practices that undermine the economy's dynamism, the entry of small businesses and youth into industries, and South Africa's ability to create jobs and drive industrialization. Honorable members, this year marks the 15th anniversary of the competition authorities, who have made remarkable progress with transforming the economy. I'm pleased to announce that in November, South Africa will host a major conference of competition authorities from the BRICS countries, sharing their experiences to ensure competition policies remain relevant to developing country realities. Infrastructure development has boosted the economy and is one of the key reasons why we avoided another recession. The PICC projects under construction, with dust and bricks and cement and workers on site, is worth roughly 1 trillion rand. 1 trillion rand right now that is being constructed. It employs about 220,000 workers, building dams, roads, power stations, schools, rail lines, university facilities, hospitals, clinics, fuel pipelines, and fiber optic systems. Since the enactment of the Infrastructure Development Act last year, we've made solid progress with facilitating regulatory approvals. Working closely with Ministers Mokonyane and Molewa, 16 water use licenses and 4 environmental authorizations for infrastructure were approved. Over the past year, honorable members, a number of schools, clinics, renewable energy plants, and other infrastructure facilities have been completed and local skills have been generated. For example, more than 500,000 solar water heaters have been installed. More details of these and many other achievements will be made in various budget votes over the next few weeks. Government is now focusing on the big bold programs of Medupi, Kusile, and Ngula, where delays are severely constraining the electricity grid. Other key areas of infrastructure focus will be broadband build, transport, water and sanitation, and health facilities. Honorable members, the IDC has invested 3.7 billion rand in infrastructure in 10 African countries to strengthen regional growth. These range from cement making in Ethiopia and Namibia, gas and hydro energy in Mozambique, power generation in Ghana, in Zimbabwe, and in Nigeria, a ferry and a road in Uganda, a port and an airport in Senegal, a biofuel plant in Sierra Leone, and a water treatment plant in Sudan. We're investing in the basis of regional integration, of making Africa a growing continent. The infrastructure program has boosted South African manufacturing. From importing public transport vehicles previously, we supplied orders to Brazil, to China, to elsewhere in the world. We now have factories that have built more than 670 buses locally, that have assembled more than 32,000 taxis locally here in South Africa, creating jobs, stimulating investment. I am pleased to say that 2 weeks ago, Toyota produced the first taxi that uses almost double the levels of locally manufactured components and materials than before, a big step up for government's program. I'm working with colleagues, Minister Nkwinti and Ngesi, to strengthen capacity in the state on infrastructure, and we've directed the IDC to play a stronger role in developing the infrastructure pipeline and the technical capacity in the state. I am pleased to note that in January this year, the African Union Heads of State Summit designated South Africa as the champion to develop the manufacturing of train engines, coaches, and wagons for the whole continent. We will build on this very welcome decision to deepen our industrialization efforts. In December last year, honorable members, the PICC Council resolved that the state must crack down on theft of cable and metal from our infrastructure program that causes serious economic and social disruptions. Trains have been unable to operate, water was cut, and electricity blackouts ensued. Working closely with the Minister of Justice, amendments to various pieces of legislation have been drafted and will be tabled by him in Parliament shortly. They will expand on the power of the state to act against cable and metal theft. We cannot and will not accept the effective sabotage of our infrastructure system for the profit of syndicates. Honorable members, to support innovation, the PICC will identify areas in infrastructure where we can draw on South African inventiveness. This year, the department will partner with Wits University and the University of Johannesburg to bring their talent pool into the work of the state. The most critical partnership that we need to get right is that between business, labor, and government, so that we can turn the recent conflict-driven industrial relations into greater cooperation in creating wealth and in sharing wealth. The Deputy President has initiated a dialogue with social partners to identify the basis for stronger workplace partnership. Social tensions as a result of high inequalities will undermine the democratic gains of the past 21 years if we do not address it with urgency. We must do so. Honorable members, the successes that government points to in infrastructure, in industrialization, in all the areas that matter to our people, is the result of a collaborative effort. I therefore wish to thank Deputy Minister Masuku, with whom it's been a pleasure to work, my cabinet colleagues, in Minister Davies, Minister Ngesi, Minister Hanekom, Minister Nzimande, all the others who together constitute the economic cluster that makes this possible. The Portfolio Committee members, the IDC, whose CEO is here today, the competition authorities, ITAC, and EDD, but also the social partners in trade unions and business association for their work over the past year. I now table the Economic Development Department budget for consideration by this august House. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I now call upon the Honourable Coleman.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, the Minister and the Deputy Minister, my colleagues in the Portfolio Committee, Ministers and Deputy Ministers present, Members of Parliament, our stakeholders present here. I want to dedicate this speech to Mayor Ruth Mompati. 60 years ago, this year in Kliptown, the people of South Africa, through the Freedom Charter, committed to, amongst other things, to a nation where the wealth of our country shall be shared amongst all. A nation where we are able to trade, where we choose to manufacture and to enter all trades, crafts, and professions. Honorable Chair, from the 2nd of February to the 6th of February this year, the committee spent the week right in Kliptown at the Soweto Hotel and Conference Center, located at the Walter Sisulu Square of Dedication, where South Africans congregated on 26 June 1955 to path a new nation for our country. The week-long experience in the Soweto Hotel did three things. The first point is the significance of the symbolism of the Portfolio Committee on using the same precincts to develop its long-term strategic plan, where the people of South Africa 60 years ago committed to a future South Africa they would like to see. The second point is that the venue and surroundings reflected both the achievements of the current government, particularly in relation to support offered and confidence shown on the previously disadvantaged in the form of the first black female-owned hotel on the one hand. On the other hand, the environment reflects that more work still needs to be done. The third point is that it further confirmed the centrality of EDD in the coordination of economic development as it relates to the different needs and interventions that are required in the economy. Those are small and medium enterprises. If we were to take the scenario of the Soweto Hotel, is those that were trading outside the hotel, the medium and large enterprises such as the hotel itself, coordination in the local development and infrastructure development that is between the local community and national departments such as tourism and arts and culture. Honorable Chairperson, South Africa's economy is strongly linked to what happens globally and around us, the rest of Africa. Therefore, when growth slows down globally, particularly in our traditional trading partners such as France, China, etc., we are not immune to the effects. The global economic growth is weaker than what we would like. Growth is forecast at about 3.5% for 2015, rising to 3.7% in 2016, according to the National Treasury's Global Outlook. According to the IMF World Economic Outlook, growth in the US is picking up, forecast at about 3.5% for 2015, rising to 3.3% in 2016. In Europe, where most of our exports are destined. There's growth, but it is very slow at 2.7% for 2015 and 2.4% for 2016. Our partners in the BRICS, classified as the developing economies, with the exception of India, where growth will be higher than in the last 2 years, 2013 and 14, the GDP of Brazil, Russia, and China is slowing down. As a matter of fact, Russia is expected to have negative growth for this year. Whatever the degree of slowdown in China from 7% in 2014 to expected 6.8% in 2015 and 6.3% in 2016 hits us as South Africa hard, as China is the largest consumer of our raw materials, especially iron ore. In the rest of the continent, sub-Saharan Africa, growth is being stifled by low commodity prices. However, the growth outlook for the next years, 2015 at 4.9% and 5.2% for 2016, remains above the global average. What does this mean for South Africa? The slow international growth, especially among South Africa's trading partners, will directly affect South Africa. The slowing demand for commodities in China is particularly going to have a negative effect on Africa and South Africa's export. Growth in Africa and the appetite for manufactured goods and services provides an opportunity for South Africa to counterbalance the slowing demand in our traditional trading partners. Africa is growing and offers an expanded export market for the South African manufactured goods and services. And what are the prospects? The economic prospects in South Africa. We know that we have risks towards more positive GDP growth in South Africa, and we have two, which are external, one external and one internal. One is the one that we continue to be talking about, which is more to do with a slowing demand in China. The second one, which is external, of course. The second one is internal, which is more to do with electricity constraints facing the country. And this is also hitting hard on our manufacturing and mining sectors. Combined, these risks will have an effect on slowdown growth and also on the economy, which is not going to be able to diversify product markets to other emerging countries. And also the problem with growth in employment will slow down. This is not only to be in public sector, but also worryingly for the national treasury, private sector, job creation continues being very weak. This will negatively impact household consumption. What is the government response? One response, yes, we have a war room on electricity, which will begin to help us to see things in a brighter way. The second one is focusing on infrastructure, where in large public sector infrastructure investment in electricity and transport, while infrastructure investment on energy occupies the greatest attention due to the electricity outages, overall public sector infrastructure expenditure at all spheres of government and across all sectors, that is social infrastructure and economic infrastructure, has consistently been above 200 billion rand. We see that during the MTF, 2014-15, it was 262 billion. In 2015-16, it's forecast to be 273 billion, and 2016-17 is forecast to be 266 billion, in 2017-18 actually. That's a lot of money, yes. We are doing something, siyaqhuba. And then implementation on economic policy. How do we position the Economic Development Department? The PC on economic development is responsible for oversight of the department, which mandate is to support job creation, inclusive growth, industrialization, and social inclusion through policy work, planning coordination, use of social dialogue, as well as integration and coordination between departments, spheres of government and public agencies. There are three major policy shifts and emphasis in the Economic Development Department and its agencies that will have an immediate effect on what the state wants to achieve. The first one is the reorganization of the department. The department has cut down on bureaucracy, size, and instead created specialized positions. The department is crucial to coordinating infrastructure planning, development, and implementation. It further acts as secretariat to the PICC. The restructuring of the department has two effects on the organization. It changes the strategic thrust of the organization from policy development to policy implementation. This is in line with the focus of the medium-term strategic framework and the National Development Plan. Secondly, whilst reducing the size of organization, the idea of bringing in specialists is that it focuses its capacity and ability to effectively monitor development. The other issues around impact assessment analysis of tariff policy, focused by ITEC. Tariff policy is an important instrument for industrial policy. South Africa's trade policy, specifically trade negotiations, will completely change with the output from the impact assessment and analysis.
Honourable Member, your time has now expired.
Oh. The ANC supports the budget, and I must say, even the committee unanimously adopted the report of the Portfolio Committee.
The next speaker is the Honourable Murray.
Thank you, Chairperson. When responding to demands from citizens and the responsibility of the state, economic development and growth should be at the forefront. Without sustainable economic growth, jobs cannot be created and revenue generated to appropriate to departments, provinces, and local governments for delivery of essential and basic services. The state will not be able to constantly increase its public sector wage bill beyond the current 400 billion rand, which begs the question, where will the jobs for the over 7.3 million unemployed South Africans come from? Without a sustainable economic growth regime, an environment conducive to investment and job creation by the private sector will not be created. The NDP is clear in that the state must not be at the center of our economy, which contradicts the NGP. In this budget, which is set 27% bigger than the previous year, 83% will be transferred to the competition authorities, ITAC and CIFA. The amount to CIFA, who will be transferred to the Small Business Department, has increased to 46% of this budget. One must, however, still question the following. The provision for the PICC Secretariat, while it actually accounts to the Presidency. The 33% increase for, and I quote, growth path and social dialogue, which sounds much like a SACP old boys club and a talk shops, without tangible economic growth prospects. Within the context of its work, the department must observe, evaluate and align the state's responses on, among others, global economic performance and its impact on South Africa's economic environment, domestic economic performance, and identify constraints and challenges to be addressed, addressing the triple challenge of poverty, inequality and unemployment. We must evaluate the performance of Minister Patel in bringing about sustainable economic changes that will deal with these and put the economy on a new and progressive trajectory. Minister, your performance are being informed by the following indicators amongst others, and this is really the bottom line of your evaluation. Our GDP of 1.5% is unsustainably low. Unless we achieve a GDP of 5% or more, we will not be able to grow our economy and create real jobs. Our GDP is lower than many sub-Saharan African economies, with GDPs around 4.5%. According to the International Labour Organization, we have the 8th highest unemployment rate in the world, which is expected to increase to the 6th position in 2019. 66% of unemployed South Africans are youth. Minister Patel might be impressed with the jobs opportunities created mainly in the public sector, but these must be compared with those lost, as well as the youth becoming eligible for a job. The bottom line is 1.4 million more South Africans are unemployed since Jacob Zuma became president in 2009. That's a reality. En minister, ons oorweeg u begroting en prestasie vandag, nie die van die staat of u kollegas in soos wat u vir ons vroeër gegee het nie. Dit blyk daar is min direkte impak van u op ons ekonomiese groeiontwikkeling, want ons moet kyk wat moet u begroting ondersteun en regverdig. Minister, this is a ticking time bomb waiting to explode, and you will be judged by history on whether you were able to address these effectively. Dialogue and talk shops are insufficient. Real action must flow, real economic growth and job creation must flow from this. On a question to the Director General asking what constraints and challenges were identified prior and post the agricultural and mining unrest, and what corrective actions were taken by the department, the answer was, and I quote, nothing, unquote. This was a huge failure by the department to respond to domestic economic challenges which needed to be unblocked, not only to preserve the jobs, but to stimulate the economy to one of the primary job-driving sectors. While government must be sensitive towards the unemployed, it is important that they must embrace the challenge of employment and job creation and develop strategies in support of these NDP targets. Minister must be less fixated on the state-centered approach of the NGP and rather apply the NDP in its entirety. Ticking the boxes of KPIs and strategic objective programs, and being involved in dialogue only with social partners, mainly COSATU. Minister, these means nothing if we cannot grow the economy and support our SMMEs and corporate investors to grow the economy and create sustainable jobs. We need, amongst others, 49,000 SMEs growing at 20% per year to achieve 11 million additional jobs by 2030. In terme van die DA se handves van waardes, ons sogenaamde Values Charter, moet ekonomiese groei en aktiwiteite gebruik word om onder andere vryheid van individue te verseker deur middel van 'n werk om geld te verdien en om sodoende sy welvaart te verhoog, asook om sy talente na te jaag. Hiervoor is die beste opvoeding en werksgeleenthede noodsaaklik. 'n Regverdige samelewing te verseker waar werkskepping tot gelyke en oop geleenthede aan almal lei, waar ons prestasies deur harde werk verseker word en nie deur die omstandighede waarin ons gebore word nie. Die ekonomiese groei en relatiewe lae werkloosheid binne die Wes-Kaap is bewys dat die DA weet hoe om hulpbronne en mense te laat saamwerk ter bereiking hiervan. Mag ons nooit vergeet die verlede nie, waar ons vandaan kom nie, en die lesse wat ons geleer het nie. Maar dit is meer belangrik om te weet waarheen is ons op pad, en hoe ons saam as 'n samelewing daardie doelwitte kan bereik, tot voordeel van almal. Verseker nie met die regering se huidige ekonomiese beleid en die benadering van bevoordeeldes van enkeles en waar die regering sentraal staan tot almal nie. Ek dank u.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mbata.
Honorable House Chair, fighters at home and fighters present here, to our distinguished guests, the economic freedom fighters reject this budget. We believe that the existence of this department is not necessary. We believe that a lot that the ministry, in particular the minister, is talking about could be done by various departments which currently existed before this department. We believe the 885.8 million could be used usefully to reinforce the programs of those departments, in particular the DTI programs. We also believe that majority of the agencies that were taken from the DTI should actually be returned back to DTI. It looks like this department keeps collecting and giving away entities, which significantly indicate that there was no clear thought process as to how it was going to live side by side within the entire state machinery with other departments. Your clinging to the IDC is causing incapacity to DTI, particularly towards the implementation of the industrial policy. Despite the fact that this department is irrelevant, we need to share with you the economic realities. You will never succeed in stimulating industrialization and economic development as long as you are not in control of your natural resources. You will never succeed as long as multinational corporations continues to ship out our chrome and steel while exploiting our labor in South Africa. 21 years later, your economic policies combined have failed dismally to industrialize our country. You have failed to create sustainable jobs. Townships are deserted with no local investment. Old mining towns are ghost areas today. You have no political will to create economic development in rural areas. You have no political will to alter the structural oppression imposed by white monopoly capital. As you have claimed eloquently, that this year is the year of the Freedom Charter, why are you not implementing one of the clauses in the Freedom Charter that says, I quote, mineral wealth beneath the soil, the banks, the monopoly industry shall be transferred to the ownership of the people as a whole, and all other industry and trade shall be controlled to assist the well-being of the people as a whole. We believe as economic freedom fighters, we believe in the extraordinary involvement of the state in redirecting the economic ideology, the philosophy, and the future fortunes of our economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Nkomo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Firstly, the Inkatha Freedom Party would like to send our condolences on the passing of the ANC stalwart member, Umama Umupati. And we really do hope that all the support will be given to this family as much as possible. The IFP, Honorable Speaker, takes note that in these challenging times of deepening economic crisis, slow economic growth, and with the related socio-economic issues of poverty, quality, education, health, the lack of adequate housing, basic services, and high crime rates, curbing unemployment must be regarded as our most urgent and pressing priority. Unemployment is at the root of most socio-economic ills that plague South Africa today, with generally unemployment at approximately 25% and youth unemployment nearing or just above the 50% mark. This is a crisis, and one that cannot be mitigated by simply stating that we are in the midst of a global economic downturn. The National Youth Policy seeks to address the issue of youth unemployment through its object to place the economy on a labor-absorbing growth path and to support youth absorption into employment, and has stated that it will achieve this through public employment schemes, expanded public works programs, and internships in government departments, municipalities, and state-owned companies. This must be supported and provided with additional impetus and monitored as well in a genuine way so that we can check on the impact this has on unemployment. Honorable Chairperson, South Africa has also been economically underperforming when measured against the performance of its peers, with below per capita economic growth and higher rising debt ratios. This underperformance can be attributed to factors which are largely our own creation, labor unrest, complex and prohibited regulatory frameworks, taxes that target capital formation and investment viability, the energy crisis, and even the present corruption, ineptitude, and incompetence, which are commonplace throughout many of our public service departments today. These factors create a superstorm of barriers to our economic growth and development. The IFP further acknowledges that in order to generate economic growth, we should be looking at, firstly, reducing the ever-increasing burden of government and ways in which to make necessary government spending more effective and efficient, as inefficient expenditure only lowers the economic multipliers. SMMEs are another excellent key to unlocking growth and creating employment. Our laws and regulatory frameworks must be aligned and supportive to the creation of business environments conducive to the financing, the start-up, and the running of such enterprises. South Africa must actually move away from a dependency and welfare mindset to one of rather entrepreneurship, self-help, and self-reliance. The IFE further states that we remain of the view that political freedom must now be translated into opportunities and access to economic and socially sustainable livelihoods for all. The National Development Plan must not lock out new entrants to the job market, but rather endeavor and be supportive of the impetus to introduce active labor market policies whereby large-scale absorption of young people and women may be brought into economic activity. Chairperson, the IFP supports this vote. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mabika.
Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, the National Freedom Party is aware of the crucial importance the economic development has in fulfilling its mandate to drive economic engine of our economy. We are also painfully aware that the South African economy, which was once the most powerful in Africa, has now been surpassed by that of Nigeria and might well be surpassed by other countries on the continent in the foreseeable future. From 2002 to 2008, our GDP grew at an average of 4.5% year on year, its fastest expansion since the establishment of democracy in 1994. However, in recent years, successive governments have failed to address structural problems such as the widening gap between rich and poor, low-skilled labor force, high unemployment rate, deteriorating infrastructure, and high corruption and crime rates. As a result, since the global recession in 2008, South Africa's economic growth has been sluggish and below the African average. In the first quarter of 2014, we hit an all-time low with a negative growth rate. In addition to the structural problems mentioned, which has been around for several years now, and which our government is consistently failing to address, we now also have to consider the negative impact of our energy supply crisis and the effect of xenophobic violence on investor confidence. To add to our economic decline, we also have to contend with the negative impact of the general failure of black economic empowerment to benefit the majority of South Africans, the increase in incidents of service delivery protests, rocketing prices of fuel, stagnant rural development, and the steady erosion of the value of our currency. It is evident, Honorable Minister, that when we take all above into consideration, our economy is ailing. Some might say even critical so. The question which now comes to mind is, what strategic plans does the EDD has in place to halt the decline in our economic growth and to turn it around to place economic on a positive growth trajectory? When we look at the structural problems which inhibit economic growth, it is clear that the EDD is not positioned to deal with social issues such as crime and low-skilled labor force. However, it is well within competence and the mandate of the EDD to address issues such as widening gap between the rich and the poor, the increasing rise in unemployment, the lack of rural development, the derailing of black economic empowerment. Unfortunately, the budget tabled here today does not in any meaningful way seek to address these crucial deficits in our economic dispensation. We submit that South Africa, Honorable Minister, has enormous resources
Honorable Member, your time is now expired.
at its own disposal. We support the budget, though.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable the Deputy Minister of Economic Development.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I want to first start by thanking the Minister for the informative budget speech. The series of examples that you have shared.
Order, Honorable Members.
The series of examples that you have shared, Honorable Minister, with the people of this country about a few of many that you experience in every corner of the country. Our development finance institutions and provincial and local agencies are hard at work. Just to point out some few examples, NYDA assisted a young man who decided to join a cutthroat competitive township enterprising that we thought was beginning to be dominated by superior and experienced foreign national enterprises who outplayed local business people. He managed to claim his space in the Free State. Again, in the Free State, in Bloemfontein, SIFA assisted a young man to establish a filter antenna manufacturing initiative. And in this, he is manufacturing bolts and nuts to supply the local industry. We also visited a sweet industry funded by IGC. In this company, the workers have got shares in them beside from the salaries that they are earning. The day that I visited this factory, it was the day that they have prayed 5 years of enduring work, and they were reaching their break-even point on that day. The Provincial Development Agency has also revamped industrial development areas in various regions of the province, and one of which they have established a bed-making company. And this bed-making company is supplying different shops around the Free State. NEF in this region funded a couple of BEE mining deals with in the province, and I visited one diamond mine where such funding is actually, such financing is involved. And in the beginning of the term of this democratic government, we have indicated that part of the critical task to improve economic performance is to get our institutions to function efficiently. We highlighted that the major focus will be on the effective coordination of provincial and local efforts. This included a major effort towards alignment of work of government and the people of South Africa in general towards effective economic development. And I must point out that I have had members, the work that we do when we visit provinces is to make sure that we align our understanding of our economic development imperatives and our socio-economic development programs so that we mustn't go in tangent. And part of the things that we discuss is how at a local level, and a provincial level, we can actually be able to align that. And I can see that this task, it seems as if we have got to start it again at the national level. Because when you talk about economic development, I can hear that there are many sounds that are actually said. It is our duty as Economic Development Department to coordinate all efforts wherever they are that are going to assist us to develop the economy, to create jobs, to fight poverty, and to fight inequality. And there's no such a department that is ever or has ever been in the department that was supposed to take that particular kind of responsibility. And that is the duty of the economic development. Because when we talk about where the jobs are coming from, we're talking about mining, we're talking about agriculture, we're talking about manufacturing, we're talking about tourism, we're talking about the oceans, we're talking about learning institutions and research, we are talking about green economy. There is no one department that has got all those functions in one. And that's why the leadership of the president to identify that we need a coordinating department was very much important. We want to point out also that the task of us going to provinces is with an intention to work with the provinces to identify opportunities in those various provinces and in the various localities so that we can trace where these jobs are, so that we can identify where these opportunities are, and we work together towards getting that done. While we're bickering colleagues in my visits into the provinces, I have realized that the people of South Africa, together with their governments, together with their workers, together with their societies, they are hard at work in addressing this. I hear Honorable Mare says even up to date, he hasn't understood what NDP and NGP is all about. Go to page 90, Honorable Member. You'll understand what the NDP is actually talking about, the relationship between your NGP and the NDP. And I think by today is for the first time that I explain it to the Honorable Member, that the NDP says, when it comes to economic development and the work that we must do, that you as a country, we have already started with a task of carrying out what is supposed to do. You have already established work on your NGP. And this NGP, it is recognizing it as an action plan that is going to put South Africa in a new trajectory of economic growth. I don't know how we read our English, because that's exactly what it is saying. That's exactly what it's saying we should do. That's exactly what we are sharing with our people. That's exactly what we are sharing with our officials at the local level.
Honorable
if you
Chair.
want to understand,
Honorable Chair.
If you want to understand what that
Honorable
that
Deputy
means,
Minister. Honorable Deputy Minister, will you just sit down, please? Yes, Honorable Member.
The audience up there are participating with us here. They're clapping hands and doing all these things.
Thank you, Honorable Member. May we request the members of the public in the public gallery? We are glad you are here, but in terms of participation in the debate, it's for members of parliament. Can we just observe that, please? Honorable Deputy Minister, you may continue.
Thank you very much. If you want to understand that, and if members of the DA want to understand that, they must go and consult their officials in the Western Cape who understand exactly what this is supposed to do. And we're working closely with them because they are the citizens of South Africa who understand what is it that we must do in our work. Understanding of what, if you want to understand where, Honorable Maria against come in and say, you know what, there's a whole lot of a crisis in the country. because you're growing your economy at 1.5%, and we wanted it to grow at a level of 5% in order to create jobs. No, man. Just let's come to the reality. 2009, we had an economic crisis. We had work to do. We came up with means to actually pick up our economy. And we are saying to you that average growth of South Africa from 2000 has grown to 3.7% growth rate in economy. When we look at the Western Cape, Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, they are growing at 4%. And I'm saying Western Cape included from 2000 up to today. When coming to job creation, we are pointing out to you that the work that we are doing together with the provinces, this is what we see. Gauteng, KZN, Western Cape, and Limpopo are reflecting that they are largest growers since 2011. And with the others, Mpumalanga, Northwest, and Limpopo being largest gainers in percentage terms, not in relation to the other. That's work. That is a work, and those are measures that we have put in place to actually deal with what is it that we need to do. Our work, when we talk about manufacturing jobs, I would like you to refer you back to the NGP again, which point you to the areas which we call growth drivers. I don't know where you read your economics. I don't know where you read your economics, because anywhere in the world where you go, you should be understanding these basic things. That when you want growth, you must identify the growth drivers and be able to make inputs in them. Honorable Chairperson, I want to point out that the work that we are doing today is because we have made choices. We have made choices to lead. We have made choices to lead, and we have made choices because we want it to be like that. We want South Africa to develop. You know, Craig Mills in 2010, in his book written, Why Africa is Poor, he said the main reason why the people of Africa are poor is because their leaders have made these choices. And I was wondering, why is he saying so? And I was wondering why in the colonial environment that we are having, we will actually be blaming other people. But I pick it up, why? Because today, the apartheid leaders like Verwoerd, whom today we hear are celebrated as smart tacticians, made that decisions that the majority of the people of South Africa must stay poor, and they are today poor. And those were the choices that Verwoerd made. And with
Honorable
Verwoerd today...
Deputy Minister, your time is now expired. The next speaker is the Honorable Kwankwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair, honorable members. You know, I really thought that this was going to be quite a small affair. I had no idea that I would actually come here only to attend an ANC rally. Molweni, I've read the report of the Committee on this budget and I agree with its recommendations. In this regard, the United Democratic Movement supports Budget Vote 25. But I want to say, in agreeing with Honorable Chairperson Coleman, that indeed Honorable Squatania Kuba Nia Pambil, ne corruption. In particular, I want to agree with the committee's recommendation that the department needs to pay specific attention to the implementation of the accords. For instance, while the Youth Accord signed in 2013 was an effort to prioritize youth employment and skills development, not enough has been done to achieve this. This is important in ensuring that, among other things, when we grow the economy, we create an environment that is conducive for businesses, in particular, for small businesses to flourish. This will go a long way towards ensuring that we reduce unemployment, inequality, and grow our economy. This is also important in ensuring that with increased allocation of resources to CIFA, will come commensurate rises in the disbursements to youth-owned business enterprises. Ndifuna uthetha ngale nto uminister ndiyibethe ngesiXhosa bazokwazi uyiva abantu emakhaya. You know, when we talk about the issue of small businesses, we normally patronize small business owners. Abantu abanezibhaza shops emakhaya. City, their businesses are failing because they are failing ukuthi bakwazi ukucompete with businesses that are run by foreign nationals. There are many instances up foreign nationals, ngakumbe run izibhaza shops as an example. They call you there, they lower prices in order to drive out izibhaza shops zabantu bethu elokishini. Ayingabo bonke. And when our people complain, what do we say? We're quick to jump when big businesses complain about uncompetitive practices. But when our people complain about the same thing, what do we say? Maba compete bayokbazi is fed. That cannot be right. So we welcome the market inquiry le Minister bethetanga earlier on ethi zawujonga everything edibensene zonto because i-root cause yemicimbi ye-xenophobic attacks ayingobani bakuthi that are violent. Kukho underlying socio-economic issues. If you go to all the communities about, they complain about real issues as ba affect. But because Tina we debate here, we don't interact with them. Sales done player. This is understated. The other issue which, but Minister, today I want to focus on the role of entities such as the development finance institutions such as IDC.
Honorable Member, your time has expired. The next speaker is the Honorable Matsimbi.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Deputy Ministers present, Honorable members, our guests in the gallery, ke re kgotsong. Honorable Chair, we meet today on a high note level as ever, with our sole reason of discharging one of our duties which are mandated to us by our masses. Honorable Minister, since 1994, South Africa has been rapidly reintegrated into the global economy with the contribution of imports and exports, which rises to support our gross domestic product. We have realized that the economy has become more productive and more outward orientated. The adjustment is partially a response to domestic factors and ending of the country's trade and political isolation. As a country, we have weathered the storm of global financial crisis fairly well, considering that even most advanced economies suffered huge setbacks. A 1977 message written by our late Tatu Mandela, President Nelson Mandela, to May Adelaide Tambo, may their soul rest in peace. It read thus, I quote, "Significant progress is always possible if we ourselves plan every detail and allow intervention of fate only on our own terms. Preparing a master plan and applying it are two different things," close quote. The ANC 53rd conference adopted the NDP. Linked to this, the executive has in 2014 developed the MTSF for the 5-year period ending in 2019. Honorable Chair, when the ANC took over the apartheid government, it had a clear and intensive plan as to how to run the country and making it a better place to live in, and also ensuring that wealth is shared equally. Relationships has been established with other countries and trade agreements were reached to combat the previous trading barriers. It is indeed a milestone that others refuse to acknowledge and see. We are currently trading with 10 top countries, which are Germany, Japan, Botswana, Namibia, India, United Kingdom, United States, Belgium, China, and Mozambique. South Africa is an open economy. Exports and imports each equal almost a third of the GDP. In these circumstances, getting trade policy right is particularly important for our economic development. The EDD has an important role to play in this regard. It is responsible for International Trade Advisory Commission, or ITEC. ITEC is charged with translating government's developmental trade policy into practical measures of tariffs, rebates, and so on. For the coming year, EDD has two key performance indicators related to trade. The first is to ensure that ITEC and trade policies support industrialization, employment, and other national development objectives. The second one is to increase administrative efficiencies at ITEC. Honorable members, in this context, the department is working with other economic departments to implement an increasingly developmental trade policy. That means long-term diversification and job creation should be key criteria for trade measures. In particular, trade policy may provide temporary protection against foreign goods. For instance, because they are being dumped or because a surge of imports threatens local jobs on a large scale. But those measures will only be sustainable if at the same time supply-side interventions are used to improve the competitiveness of local producers. Honorable Minister, we are aware of the progress made since 1994, and we agree that much is still to be done in improving and monitoring our trade policies and ensuring proper implementation. In the light of the above, the ANC supports the budget vote 25. Trade has created more than 230,000 jobs in 2014. We are aware of the rate of unemployment and shortage of skills in our country, but we cannot sit in the corner and cry. We will soldier on in the interest of our country. The ANC-led government will ensure that the speedy implementation of the NTP is in place. In the past few years, we have seen improved coordination between ITECs, trade interventions, and other industrial policy measures to support diversification, for instance. The establishment of local tax assembly involved both some trade protection and support from Industrial Development Corporation and the Department of Trade and Industry. Similarly, when ITEC provided protection to local poultry producers, the IDC was expected to assist producers to improve their competitiveness. Honorable members, being arrogant and attacking other members while talking is not going to assist you. Hodio, fonyo is not going to assist you. As we continue to move South Africa forward, we are just puzzled by our colleagues who praise this NDP so much and oppose the developers. However, we are a forgiving organization. That is why we don't even blame them when they praise and claim our Tata Madiba. They so try hard to forget the route he traveled before he was released. It is a thorn in their flesh, but Bazau strongish. Honorable Minister, we are aware of the decline in employment, especially in the mining and manufacturing, which was caused by the intensive labor strikes in both sectors. Exports to China fell by 15% in 2014 in response to...
Your time is up.
Honorable Chair, thank you very much. Siyachuba na Kenza Mutame Washto.
I will just want to order. I would like to remind members of the public that you are not supposed to participate. Do not clap hands. Thank you very much. Honorable Albert.
Thank you, Chairperson. Minister, analyzing government's economic policy is not a simple exercise and is compounded by the fact that economic management is divided into various portfolios, namely economic development, trade and industry, finance, and small business development. Interdepartmental cooperation is poor, thus creating unnecessary duplication, obstructions due to non-aligned policy execution, and personal kingdom building. Dit is ironies dat die ekonomiese bestuur van die land aktief gedesentraliseer word tussen die departemente, maar dat die ANC-SAKP ekonomiese beleid een van sentralisering is. Daarbij spreek die regering se verskillende ekonomiese planne nie tot mekaar nie en word om die meer voortgehou as die meesterplan, afhangende van watter aspek beklemtoon word. So word die nasionale ontwikkelingsplan as die meesterplan beskou, ander kere weer die nuwe groeipad of die nywerheidsbeleid aksieplan en daar word self verwys na die ANC se vryheidsmanifest wat nie enige regstatus geniet nie. This policy incoherence is taking place within an environment of a growing fiscal deficit, an unstable labour environment, power supply shortages, a current account deficit, and a junk status sovereign credit rating looming. This department's budget vote aim is to promote economic development, policy formulation, and planning for the benefit of all South Africans. It thus seems from this that this department should then be the leading one in taking charge of the economy, but this is not the case. Given this context, it is of the utmost importance that South Africa's economy is set on the right path of development and growth by making use of a focused, evidence-based policy, driving all the departments in the same direction. Ideally, what should be accepted as principles for the development are the following. Eerstens, die voorvereiste vir enige regeringsaksie is om vas te stel of dit inderdaad grondwetlik is. Daarom moet die grondwet as die enigste rigsnoer gebruik word en nie enige ander dokument soos die ANC se vryheidsmanifest nie, want dit het geen regskrag nie. Furthermore, it is clear that the current economic policies are not working. Unemployment is at the same level as that of 2009. This means we must look at policies of countries that actually do work, like the United Kingdom, the United States of America, and Germany, not the basket cases like Cuba and Zimbabwe. Laastens, die regering moet beleggers na Suid-Afrika lok en nie wegstoot met beperkende beleid oor grondeienaarskap, onteiening en eienaarskap in sekere sektore se sekuriteitsmaatskappye nie. Dis asof die regering dink handel met BRICS gaan opmaak as ons nie meer handel dryf met die Europese Unie of die VSA nie. Minister, in the end, we will have to open up spaces for entrepreneurs to create value and jobs. This means that we cannot merely act as run-of-the-mill politicians like you, but we will also have to become political entrepreneurs that create value for growth, unlike the ANC at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Albert. Honorable Cele.
Thanks, Honorable Chair, Ministers and Deputy Ministers present, members of the Portfolio Committee, honorable members, comrades and friends, guests in the gallery. I am pleased to speak on the budget vote of the Economic Development Department today. The ANC approach in dealing with the competition in the economy is informed by the philosophical outlook of promoting a mixed economy. Mixed economies, by their very nature, bring about inherent contradictions that are necessary for the growth of an economy. Part of this is the question of competition. The ANC, which governs the state, is informed in its approach by strategy and tactics, the policy guiding document that is applied to all given material conditions. This approach places the state as one that is both democratic and developmental and rests on four pillars. One, a state that sets the national agenda, a state that drives and influences the character and shape of society and is a part of in this economic agenda. A state that builds in capacity in the provision of goods and services, and a state that pays attention to building its technical capacity. At the 2007 52nd National Conference of the ANC in Polokwane, the distortions created by monopoly capital on the economy were discussed. This undesirable practice, which is at times supported by the negative behavior of cartels, led to the ANC to ensure that greater regulation of the economy was necessary. In this, the competition authorities plays a key role. Whilst recognizing the role of competition in a mixed economy, it is necessary for the state to regulate such economic behavior so that economic behavior in general is influenced in the direction of being developmental in character and not just accumulative. One of the biggest challenges we face in the economy is the monopolies and cartels that impose higher prices on industry and consumers and that keep new entrants out. A monopoly, honorable members, is a single company who dominates an industry and has no real competitor. A cartel is a group of companies who meet, often in secret, and illegally collude to raise or divide markets. Let us be clear. We inherited this from an inward-focused, corrupt apartheid economy. We cannot realize the vision of the Freedom Charter while we have these monopolies. In 1999, the new Competition Act came into existence. It is one of our key weapons against monopolies and cartels. The Competition Commission, the Competition Tribunal, and the Competition Appeal Court are all created through this Act of Parliament. The Commission and the Tribunal fall under the broad oversight by the Minister of Economic Development since 2010. It reports to the Economic Development Portfolio Committee. In the past 5 years, we have seen a truly remarkable development. Our institutions acted swiftly and effectively against those who abuse their power. Investigations have been made into industries like construction, cement, steel, fertilizers, bread, chicken, and many others. The decision of the Competition Tribunal on the Sasol polypropylene case was very good because it showed the way in which companies abuse market power. We are disappointed that Sasol has taken the matter on review. Parliament will have to regulate more clearly on this matter in future. The competition authorities are imposing harsh fines and penalties for companies who transgress the competition laws, including 1.4 billion rands fine to the construction industry. For mergers and company buyouts, the competition authorities are now putting together conditions to protect jobs and industrial capacity. As a country, we made sure Walmart cannot simply come into South Africa and import goods. They must also support local industry. That is the vision of the ANC that will ensure success in the fight against unemployment, poverty, and inequality. While we support the efforts of the ministry and the department fully, we want to send a signal to businesses who collude. You will go to jail because we'll tighten up the rules. You will have even stiffer penalties applied if we do not respect the laws of a democracy. The corporate sector needs to create jobs and increase levels of investment through working with government. In the next 12 months, we'll want the competition regulators to look at basic products that South Africa uses on a daily basis and investigate why prices are so high. We must look at the structure of the retail sector. More of our people are being squeezed out of sponsorship by growing power of large companies. We are pleased to know that the fines and penalties imposed in the past 5 years was more than 5 billion rands and was bigger than the budget of the department and the competition regulators together. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson and members, at the core of the ANC's economic mandate is the transformation of the economy for inclusive growth. At the heart of radical economic transformation is the need for coordinated interventions in a number of sectors to fundamentally alter the structure of the South African economy. This requires an effective state that is decisive in its pursuit of structural change. The role of the competition authorities in what we refer to as the radical socio-economic transformation of the second phase of our transition will require greater focus on dealing with the distortion in our economy and ensuring that inclusive growth is a reality. The mandate of the competition authorities will not automatically be achieved given the contesting forces with which it has to contend. Promoting the greater spread of ownership relates to ownership and development of the economy, and this will require greater progressive regulation for which the ANC stands committed to seeing happens. That is government in action, an ANC-led government who is implementing the policies in our manifesto. For these reasons, we in the ANC support the budget.
Cele, your time is up.
We support the budget. Bengithi ngizoshola uShandu, Honorable Shandu, ukuthi ungalibali.
Honorable Cele. Honorable Likota.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the House, the most pressing issue of the time in our country is economic growth and vigorous economic growth. As a matter of fact, Minister, the recent social unrest we saw in our country stems directly from the fact that our economy is so sluggish at this time, not creating jobs, and then large numbers of unemployed people become uneasy. Now, I like the points that you were making earlier on, Minister, about somebody who started a little shop, a shoemaking business, and somebody starting some fowl run or something like that and so on. All of these activities would be useful and helpful if we maintained what economic achievements our country had made. At the present time, the country has been deindustrializing. Our big companies have been closing down. And I'm trying to compare, sitting there, trying to compare the numbers you were talking about of the shoemakers and so on. Masimon, the gold mines of the Free State, are shedding, announced yesterday, 4,000 jobs are going. And we celebrate 30 here, 20 there, 15 here. And when you do the mathematical calculation, our economy is going down. Our country is going down. We must do something about sustaining that which we inherited. Let's accept this one thing. There are things we inherited from the very unpleasant circumstances of apartheid, but which are still useful, such as big business. The infrastructure we inherited, we don't need to break it down first and rebuild it again. So what we need is to be able to identify what are those things that we inherited that we can build on and take the country forward. At the present time, unless we recognize that hard reality, we will be trying to take our country backwards to go and start there first. Now, capitalism is expansive in its growth. If you lose the market, if we lose some of our own market today, I promise you by the time we develop companies that can move into that space, there will be so many other companies from other countries that will have moved in there, and we will not be able to regain that space again. So it's vital, it's very vital that this is done. The third point I'd like to make is that our departments, I talk as a critic, but one with a sense of patriotism because we want South Africa to advance. Our departments must work as a team. We can't have the Department of Education that makes children pass at 30% and all of that, and think we will get the skills which we need to build our economy. We must produce the best students, trained people, and all of that, so that we are able to deliver the best outcomes, so that we take the country forward. So the departments seized to this area of the work must work as a team, not as competitors or in silos. That much is vital. The fourth point I'd like to make is that on Sunday I read how Robert Gumede said that one of the ideal BEE companies, which he heads, he said, this thing is not sustainable. It's finished. The fact of the matter is that this BEE things that has been done and so on is not the answer to the problems of our country. And that too, we need to discuss that and agree on what is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kliane.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, Minister and Deputy Minister of Economic Development Department, other ministers and government leaders present, all protocol observed. The African National Congress most unreservedly supports this budget vote, and our unambiguous reasons follow below. The 10th clause of the Freedom Charter is, there shall be peace and friendship. For the effective and meaningful implementation and actualization of this clause of the historical document of the people, as it relates to the future of the people, the women, children, and those people of South Africa living with disabilities, we need to begin from the premise that says that their future is inextricably intertwined with that of the people of the SADC region, and indeed that of the African continent as a whole. No sustainable economic development can be realized in our country if the rest of the continent remains a sea of poverty and underdevelopment. Likewise, the achievement of peace and friendship can only materialize in conditions of abundance, self-reliance, and a better life for all. The progressive government of South Africa has since its establishment, but particularly from the year 2009, after the formation of the Economic Development Department, focused on the accelerated development of industrial infrastructure such as roads, railways, and telecommunications in the SADC region. This infrastructure was and still remains the necessary prerequisite for the movement of South African goods and services to the rest of Africa and for the entry in the country of manufactured goods from the continent. Without this movement, Honorable Chairperson, without this movement of goods between countries in the SADC region, regional economic integration and cooperation will remain but just a hollow dream. Improved infrastructural conditions have clearly triggered a marked increase in investment by South African companies in the region, and this augurs well for the much-needed job creation and development for the people of the host countries. It also exposes the host countries to South African technology and expertise through the training of local human resource. The recent xenophobic attacks on our brothers and sisters from the continent and elsewhere has no place in our being, and we condemn them with contempt. We are one as Africans and as members of the human race. It is only by joining hands as Africans that we can defeat the legacy of colonialism on the continent. No one will do that for us except ourselves. When a sound foundation of economic development has been created in the region, it will no longer be necessary for Africans to leave their own countries and to migrate to others as economic migrants. We want our brothers and sisters from other parts of the continent to know that they are welcome in our country, particularly in the capacity of investors. Honorable Minister Patel, the ANC and the people of South Africa highly appreciate the good work that your department and its entities, particularly the IDC, have done for human development in South Africa and the region. We urge you to continue the wonderful work of industrialization, renewal, and the reinvigoration of our region. Rise and shine, Minister Patel, because you are the chosen one. You and your cabinet, a collective. You have been anointed by the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency, Comrade Jacob Zuma, to be at the vanguard of this noble process of tackling unemployment, poverty, and inequality, primarily in our country as well as in the region. We are therefore not surprised that the African Union declared South Africa the champion of industrialization and development on the continent. Although time constraints prevent us telling the real story of your success, we'll quickly touch on a few of the worthy investments undertaken by the IDC in the region. The IDC funded the Agri-Bank of Zimbabwe as part of its strategy to find development finance institutions that operate outside South Africa, but which provide funding to companies that import South African manufactured goods and services. The Agri-Bank investment of $60 million helped to create 2,500 permanent jobs and over 2,374 seasonal jobs in Zimbabwe. The investment also helped with the preservation and creation of additional manufacturing jobs in SA, in addition to the goods and inputs that will be imported to Zimbabwe. The other worthy investment is that of the company Cimentos da Beira, which is based in Mozambique and owned by Consolidated General Minerals, and which manufactures cement. The company has a capacity to produce 800,000 tons of cement per annum and has created hundreds of jobs for the locals in Mozambique. Given the high demand for cement on the continent, this project will treble its value in due course and benefit the people of the region and continent in a big way. Another investment that we must mention here is that of Namib Poultry Industries.
Honorable Kiani, your time
The
is up.
African National Congress, my beginning, the world, my oyster, the African National Congress, my ending. Thank you very much.
Honorable Atkinson.
Honourable Chairperson, honourable members, it has been one of the great privileges of being a member of the Economic Development Portfolio over the past year to meet participants in the national economy across many sectors and in businesses large and small. It has also been possible to hear of the challenges experienced in creating sustainable businesses in South Africa directly from those affected. The success of the private sector in particular is critical to economic growth in South Africa and to creating jobs in an environment where unemployment levels constitute a national emergency. With South Africa's narrow unemployment rate of around 23.4%, almost 5 times higher than any of the BRICS countries, and with almost 66% of our youth unemployed, the creation of jobs is absolutely fundamental to our economic survival. We all know that political freedom means very little if so many of our people are unable to provide for themselves. Every policy devised by this government should be checked for its potential to grow jobs, and anything that kills jobs should be immediately scrapped. An example is the latest proposed BBBEE legislation, which looks to downgrade broad-based empowerment and to focus primarily on equity ownership in businesses. Surely a case of the government preferring the connected few over a much wider application of the advantage to many. This surely runs counter to the idea of broader and more inclusive economy that we're trying to create. Undoubtedly, the worst obstacle business owners have had to face in recent times is insufficient power and the crisis created by Eskom's regular load shedding, or to call it by its proper name, job shedding blackouts. It is accepted by this government that a significant increase in economic growth cannot take place until the electricity crisis is resolved. I was shocked to discover in an oversight visit to Middelburg last year to the producer of finished chrome steel that South Africa's share of the worldwide production of chrome steel has fallen from around 52% in 2008 to only 33% last year. And I'd just like to make a comment that I completely agree with the Honourable Lekota about the issue of the deindustrialization of South Africa. And if you need an example of that, you can just look at those stats, and that explains to you about how our economy is deindustrializing. The result of this fall in chrome ore is that chrome ore is now exported directly from South Africa to China, where they have sufficient electricity to produce a finished product. Think not only of the raw chrome ore that is exported to China, but all the jobs that are exported with it. Any plans for beneficiation really are dead in the water until our electricity supply problems are resolved. Creating a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship amongst our people is absolutely critical to accelerate job creation in South Africa. Government's intervention in the sector has seen the creation of CIFA and CEDA, and much support is offered through small businesses in the private sector and through investment funds targeting startup businesses. At a recent meeting I attended with many of those involved in assisting small business, it was pointed out that South Africa's problem is not a lack of funding available to small entrepreneurs, but the lack of bankable ideas to fund. In this vein, I was privileged to meet the former UK Coalition Minister Vince Cable in January, whose ministry is very aptly named Business, Skills and Innovation. We had a discussion about the close relationship between his department and other universities and technical institutions in helping to monetize innovative ideas. These institutions provide the ideas that the innovation department can then assist to turn into large businesses. His colleagues mentioned they draw heavily on the ideas of the German Fraunhofer Foundation when looking at expanding innovation in the UK. This has no doubt been one of the ingredients that has helped the UK create more than 2 million jobs over the past 5 years, and that's after 2009, Deputy Minister, after the massive economic crisis in the world. And the UK has actually created more jobs than all other countries in the EU combined. Financing entrepreneurship has been adequate in South Africa, Minister, but creating a real culture of new ideas and innovation through education and a closer partnership with institutions that create ideas is fundamental. And I was very pleased to hear in your speech that you mentioned that you're looking at creating a closer relationship with WITS and University of Joburg. And I'd just like to encourage you to take that further and maybe even look at the University of Fort Hare, because there are obviously people there with really good ideas. Yeah. Rather than just trying to create a handful of industrialists, this government needs to broaden its ambitions to create a culture of new ideas and millions of entrepreneurs. Lastly, when looking at establishing job creation zones, this government needs to be serious and honest in the applications of its programs. On an oversight visit in January to Aerosud, a Centurion-based aircraft components manufacturer, we were told about the adjacent Centurion Aviation Village that the Department of Trade and Industry has promised to create since 2010. This was meant to be an aviation-focused business zone established adjacent to the Waterkloof Air Base. In answer to a parliamentary question, I asked the Minister of Trade and Industry 95 million rand has been spent in the past 5 years for preparation work for the village, but all that was visible to us was a large patch of open land with piles of sand. Trade and industry has been claiming this as one of their successes in departmental presentations of job creation. But we're forced to admit through another parliamentary question this week that there's been little progress in the village due to a suspension of a senior official in the department and a forensic audit into his actions. Clearly, one of the ANC's favourite quotes from Cabral, namely, "Tell no lies, claim no easy victories," doesn't apply to the Department of Trade and Industry. Minister Patel, one of your major tasks of your department is to unblock obstacles to creating jobs. I ask that you confer with your ministerial colleague regarding the Centurion Aviation Village, as government inaction is robbing our people of jobs. The Centurion Aviation Village is an excellent idea and should be brought into life as another job creation hub. This cannot be an easy lie by this government, but it should become a job-creating victory for our people. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Pikinini.
Thank you very much, Chair. Honorable Chairperson and members of Parliament and the guest. I will talk to the report, the economic report on 2014 by AU and the United Commission to reveals that one of the most puzzling paradoxes of the last decade is that has benefited from unprecedented growth, whilst a large part of its population remain trapped in economic poverty, facing unemployment and inequality. It is for this reason that the ANC 53rd National Conference reaffirmed the economic vision of the ANC as the one that rests on the giant shoulders of the African Claims and Freedom Charter. The Freedom Charter in particular enjoins us to build a society that its people share in their countries well. It also enjoins us to use mineral and natural resource beneath and above the soil to actual benefit of the people of South Africa. As we discuss this budget today, it should be known that it provides us with an opportunity to reflect on the road we have traversed since we adopted the radical stance on economic transformation in 2012. It also provides us with an opportunity to reflect on the extent of our economic and industrial policy trajectory as it relates to economic growth and the success of radical economic transformation project going forward. According to economic development, since 2011, the department has made significant strides in normalizing the regulatory environment, in particular the alignment of the provincial growth and development strategy to talk to the national strategy, with the exception of the Western Cape province. Many provinces in our country are moving with necessary speed to align their IDP, that is integrated development plans, with national growth path. In this regard, the department through this budget will drive and lead major important projects in infrastructure development and water and sanitation rehabilitation projects, including revamp of power station and communication infrastructure and many, many more. These projects are adding to desired value to the PICC in its important work to develop the refurbished critical economic infrastructure in a desired effort to bridge inequalities, establishment, unlocking employment opportunities and crush poverty. Therefore, the establishment of the Department of Economic Development in South Africa was a strategic response to a call to faster change and radical economic transformation. The ANC has again recently established the Department of Small Business and Development Cooperatives as a fundamental assault to poverty and employment and inequality in our country. However, in the same vein, the ANC is still of the firm view that the redistribution of economic assets in South Africa have not met the desired expectation as envisaged by the African Claims and the Freedom Charter. Thus, the ANC in Mangaung has resolved others to take decisive and resolute action to overcome the triple challenges of widespread poverty, deepening inequality, and large scale of unemployment. This is why the essence of this budget is aimed at first to use industrialization in South Africa as a necessary economic project going forward and use the infrastructure program as one element of beneficiation in South Africa. The second is an active program of localization and beneficiations. This resonates with the President Zuma's call during the SONA for local content and procurement by the state and state-owned enterprise, so that what government buys help to unleash job opportunity programs in the local economy, including creation of industrial jobs and fight poverty in South Africa. Thirdly, but not least, is better coordination and planning within the economic cluster of government, including NETLEC and the forums of social dialogue, so that we unblock all the obstacles towards successful industrialization projects. This program of industrialization has great potential to unearth many possibilities such as skills development to fight, among others, energy shortages and the likes. We are very sure that under the leadership of the Minister of Economic Development, we'll be able to create decent work and decent jobs in our endeavor for radical economic transformation and inclusive economy. The department has already increased its funding level very substantially. In the past 5 years, the ITC expanded its approval lending level to 59 billion, whilst Minister today has talked about the availability of 23 billion to do our work through ITC, which is a bold start to what we need. A growing part of that investment has gone into areas such as the green economy, filmmaking, agro-processing, other key sectors of the economy. It is in this regard that as the ANC, we support the stretch target that the ministers put to the ITC for the next 5 years by the 23 billion that is spoke about. I will need a major shift, and I'm pleased to note that the progress of the ETT has made with growth of the soya crushing plant in Mpumalanga and the textile assembly plants in Gauteng and KZN, and already in the past few years we have become manufacturers of buses with factories in Germiston and Cape Town. These are areas of example of industrialization program led by ANC government. I'm definitely sure that in the next 4 years, the industrialization efforts of the ANC will assist in the radical transformation society, especially radical economic transformation. We need more black industrialists, not silent partners who draw dividends from simply being shareholders, but industrialists who help to make food products, clothing, steel, electronic gadgets, and cement. Youth and women empowerment should take a center stage in our program for reindustrialization of South Africa. This program, specifically the creation of black industrialists, must bring into the fore the energy of young people in general and women in particular into the productive sector of the economy. We must send an important message that if you are smart, a young woman or a young man, don't think you must only rely on working for government or being a doctor. But you can have a successful story by running a successful factory, mine, or a farm. You can thereafter employ your fellow South Africans. This can make you part of our industrial development program. In conclusion, as the economic report on Africa concludes, it outlines that we need to use our government to intervene through radical economic and industrial policy to help speed up structural transformation of society, of our economy, by addressing, among others, the market failures that the minister speak about here. The other point, people that attend the meeting there are umbata, normally.
Honorable.
Others are not part of that.
Honorable,
Thank you very much,
Honorable
Chair.
Pikinini. Honorable Mbata, not Mbata.
Oh, Honorable Mbata, thank you very much for that. You see, we have one industrialist that we didn't talk about. His story, Kamamu Tefni Mashilengus. He's a mine producer with iron and ore. So we're talking about living example. Now we ANC Yakuba, Ipeka Pambili, and we're doing very great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Minister of Economic Development, Honorable Patel.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson, and I'd like to thank all the members of Parliament for the comments that have been made in this debate. I'd like to go back. A week ago, I addressed an investment conference of investors with who control in their day-to-day decisions about 6.5 trillion rand of investable funds. And they had a presentation there by one of the foremost thinkers on strategy, Michael Power of Investec. And Mr. Power outlined in a few deft slides where the South African economy comes from, where it fits into the global value chain, how it compares with, say, BRICS countries, with developed countries. And at the heart of that presentation was the challenge that I think this debate grappled with. How do we create jobs? How we drive industrialization? How do we empower our people? In responding to that debate, there were two broad approaches. On the one side, there's an approach that says, we've made progress with a number of areas, but we need to do a lot more. We need to do more to create sustainable jobs and to save existing jobs. And that narrative, and perhaps if I take Honorable Lekota's question, how do we save jobs and create jobs? It goes to this issue. What do you do in an economy when you have a rapid decline in the global price of iron ore, of platinum, of gold? What do you do when global demand begins to dry up? You need to deepen your industrialization. And that means giving South Africans, sometimes small businesses, medium businesses, an opportunity to get into the economy. So when we celebrate a woman who opens a shoe factory, when we celebrate a black South African maize and soya farmer, we are celebrating what are the roots of our long-term prosperity. We cannot rely only on high metal prices, high iron ore prices to sustain us. So that really is the dilemma we face. How do we go about it as government? So the first thing that we recognize is we've got to increase the infrastructure platform that the economy relies on. There's now an investment in transport and logistics on a scale that South Africa has not seen before. We've seen now investment, I've pointed out, 39 renewable energy plants, solar plants, wind plants, hydroelectricity plants that bring energy into our grid. We've invested very significantly now to expand the capacity to bring water to industry, but also to communities. And that is caught in one statistic. We're spending now R1 trillion on infrastructure. And you can see that example. You need to visit different parts of the country. It's not in your airport, driving to the main hotel in the 4 or 5 metros. It's not only there. That was where it was in 2010. Today, you've got to go to Witbank in Mpumalanga to see there 16,000, 17,000 workers hard at work there. You've got to go to areas along the fuel pipeline from Durban right through to Gauteng to see Africa's biggest oil pipeline being laid that brings petrol and diesel and jet fuel to Gauteng. You've got to go to where my colleague, the Minister of Basic Education, went a week and a half ago in Free State to open the 100th school under the ASIDI program, schools that give young South Africans hope and optimism about the future, to see what we're doing on infrastructure. But the second thing we do is we invest. Look at the figures of the IDC. In the last 5 years, the Industrial Development Corporation directly put 61 billion rand into the South African economy. For each billion rand the IDC invests, private investors bring an extra 2 billion rand. So we talk here of 180 billion rand of investment that has been facilitated by the IDC. That for me is an example, Honorable Lekota, of us shifting away from the fixation we've had in the past with only seeing the narrow areas of our work. We're seeing now how we can unlock opportunity. But I must say, while a lot of the points made by the members of parliament have been very helpful and very, I think, appropriate, issues around investment, competition, trade, the debate has also sometimes posed some false propositions. And it's regrettable, I think, that from one of the speakers, the honorable speakers of the DA and one of the speakers of the EFF, the refrain is, everything is bad, everything is broken, Everything needs to be changed. Please let us be the government. Please, please, pretty please. The thing is, you went to the electorate and you lost. You lost very dramatically. The DA said it would get 30% of the vote. It's an opposition party that didn't even have the ambition to win. It did not get 30%. Now let's look at the question of jobs. Honorable Marais, who generally, I hope I speak parliamentary languages, generally is a very decent chap. I should say an honorable chap. In the portfolio committee is more complimentary about our work. When faced here with an audience, Honorable Marais has unfortunately gone against the normal character and just been extremely critical. So Honorable Marais says, you know what, when President Zuma got into office, our unemployment rate was X. When Honorable Zuma is now president, it is much higher. I shared with this House the story for the Western Cape. And I put to the House during the debate on the State of the Nation address that when Premier Zille took office in 2009, in a province without underdevelopment deficits, she inherited from an ANC administration a provincial unemployment rate of 19.9%. 19.9, the lowest in the country. Today, that rate is 24.5%. Almost 5 percentage points higher than it was, and it grew faster than the national rate. Let me say that again. The unemployment rate in the Western Cape grew faster than the national unemployment rate. When Premier Zille assumed power, there were 525,000 unemployed persons in the Western Cape. Today, 6 years later, there are 705,000 unemployed persons in the Western Cape, or 181,000 additional unemployed people. I say this with some sadness because the people of the Western Cape deserve better. Now, if we reduce debates in Parliament to these point scoring, that's what you're going to get back. You're going to get point scoring back. If instead of that, you were to lift the debate to see how do we increase competitiveness, decent work opportunities, investment, we can do better. We can point out to the work of the competition authorities that have pierced the veil on secrecy in the private sector, where we've had, in many cases, huge levels of collusion. We've had cartels, we've had price fixing. We're breaking that up. We are ensuring now that, in fact, we get to the point where people compete fairly and openly. There are many businesses in South Africa that are good corporate citizens who invest, who make a difference to things. I can cite the clothing industry where 5-6 years ago it had enormous job losses. Through the work that we've done with government and the private sector, we now have an industry that has in fact decreased very substantially the job losses. Factories are opening, people are employing workers here in South Africa. That is done through the work of this government. I see Honorable Mbata is very excited. I would encourage Honorable Mbata to come to the Portfolio Committee meetings, because that's where we actually debate the issues. And Honorable Mbata would be well advised to be educated on what we're doing in government in those meetings. But I think, Honorable Chairperson...
Honorable Minister, okay, please take a seat, let's hear. Honorable Mbata.
Honorable Chair, can you protect me, Chair? I do attend committee meetings. Protect me, Chair.
Okay, please sit down, you are protected. Honorable Minister, please continue.
Now, Honorable Chairperson, I wanted to take a few minutes really just to say this is what happens when we allow the debate to descend just to point scoring. This is not where we want the debate to be. We want the debate to rise to what we need to do to build on the solid foundations. We have 15.3 million employed people in South Africa. It's the highest in our history, but we still have significant unemployment problems. So we need to find ways in which we work together to increase the rate of employment. We have today enormous investment in infrastructure, but we still have large numbers of people in South Africa who need to get to schools, who need to get to healthcare clinics. How do we work together to achieve that? That's really the message that we want to bring. So I'd like to thank those parties who have supported the budget vote. Thank you very much. We've got the majority support here. We'll work with everybody. And finally, Chairperson, I'd like to invite all the members of Parliament who are present here today to a reception in the old Assembly area where we will continue this debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members are reminded that the Extended Public Committee on Vote 13 Women will meet at 16:40 at the Old Assembly Chamber. That then concludes the debate and business of this Extended Public Committee, and the committees will now rise. Thank you very much.